What's the TwitchCon news? Oh, yeah. So Adriana Chechik, the lady that jumped into the foam pit after winning her match at the TwitchCon, or the Lenovo Intel booth at TwitchCon, she broke her back in two places. Her surgery is done now, and I'd like to read her tweet. Because, man, I tell you what, it's only up from here. Sounds like everything's going to be going great. Here she said, where is it? Surgery went well. It took 5 hours and 30 minutes. More fusions than expected. Bones were completely crushed and nerve damage to my bladder. Hopefully I'll be able to pee again in the near future. No more squirting, probably. Had some bleeding around the bone, but overall good. Legitimately life-altering. The rest of her life course has completely changed. And now squirting is off the table, I suppose. But she's being lighthearted about it, but on a very serious note, having fusions at her age with an injury that severe, she's looking at a lifetime of fucking misery. I was reading about some people that have had fusions in their back like that. That is something that never goes away, the pain. Her follow-up tweet also was this. In a lot of pain, but feeling hopeful and ready to bring the heat to walk again. Anyone know where I can get my brace blinged or a pink coating for it, as I'll be in it for a long time? I don't even want to read this one out. This is fucking horrifying. All from an improperly set up foam pit at a convention. This is 100% the Lenovo Intel booth fault. 100%. Let me once again try and find this clip. It's from Josh Strife Hayes, who actually spent some time working on these foam pits, so he gives a little deeper insight.
I used to work at a trampoline park. I know a thing or two about foam pit safety because it was drilled into us from the start. Safety in those kind of things is paramount. Like, if someone gets injured, you shut stuff down and you work out why. And you
Which
work
they
out
didn't
whether
do.
It's your fault,
They kept
or
it
it's
up.
their fault, and what can be done about it immediately. Foam pits were at least 2 meters deep. They had so much foam in them. They had springy floors underneath. They had wood underneath that would bend and break if something really big hit it. So there was still some give there. There was some absorption of all that power. It's had I have been working at that as an event, I'd have said this isn't safe. This is not safe.
Yeah, I think
at all.
anyone with eyes would
There
have
is
said
no
that.
way
I don't know how the fuck this happened.
on top of concrete is going to protect anyone. Now, people have said, oh, they've got a waiver. You know, they can't do anything. They've got a waiver. Waivers don't protect you from negligence.
I think that's a really important point he makes, and he'd know better than most. I was under the impression her hands were also tied with that waiver, but that is a really good point, that if it's proven to be negligence, which I think anyone who would watch that video would see that it was improperly set up, she could have a legitimate case. Not against TwitchCon, I don't think. It'd have to be going after Lenovo Intel, I think. Because TwitchCon, it'd be very hard to prove TwitchCon was negligent on that booth since it's not their booth. They just okayed them to be there. So if she does pursue it, it'd have to be going after them. I don't know if she will. I would say it's probably worth it because she's looking at an extremely expensive and very, very, very brutal future. Like caring for that back injury now. Multiple fusions, the rod, PT, surgeries, all of that is going to be so expensive. I do think she probably should. I also work at a trampoline park. The smallest occurrence, we shut down the foam pit. The rules we have for it are set straight. It was 4 feet deep and has springs and foam padding at the bottom. This was unacceptable. Exactly. Like, at the very least, if you're not going to put enough foam, you need to have something that's not just a fucking slab of concrete. You may as well just put, like, barbed wire and spikes at the bottom, like a Mortal Kombat fatality pit. Like, it was such a dumb setup. Such an easily avoidable situation that has legitimately had a massively detrimental impact on one person's life now. And the girl who broke her ankle in 3 possible ways. You're getting things mixed up now. You're starting to cross some wires here. The girl who broke her ankle in 3 ways wasn't at the foam pit. That one is not Twitch's fault even slightly. She went a little too hard in her activity, so she ended up jumping over a chair, landing on her ankle and breaking it in 3 ways. That was... Twitch... No one could have planned for that. She just went like fucking superhero mode over the chair and landed on her ankle. That one is not Twitch's fault. Do you think they'll have the foam pit again at TwitchCon next year? Good question. I think they should, but this time they make it even more dangerous, like an actual Thunderdome. So you go in there, this time they actually have like a moat around it instead of foam with like alligators in it or something. Like really just go in, like make it as life-threatening as possible. That booth is extremely lucky that the only other injury that wasn't Adriana breaking her back in 2 places was a dislocated knee, which is still a serious injury, but they kept it open after the back break. Someone could have just straight up died. That was very real. People falling in that pit, they fall head first, they're hitting the concrete, they could have just died. They got super lucky because they didn't shut it down after the injury. So that could have ended up a lot worse. Has the company said anything about the injuries? That's a great question, actually. Let me look. She can't walk anymore, like forever? Not forever. Through PT, I feel like she will be able to walk again, but she's never going to be the same. She had multiple bone fusions, man, in her fucking back, her spine. Like, there should have never been a foam pit on top of concrete anyway. Yeah, obviously. But even that would be fine if they also put an actual, like, spring pad and, like, cushion mat above the concrete and then the foam blocks. It could have still been fine. Did they compensate her for in some way? No. Here's my thought. I'm very confident in saying that they won't release a statement because then that could be used against them should she sue. Which again, I do think she should, since this is going to be a very long and very expensive journey with all these surgeries she's getting and all the surgeries she's going to be getting, as well as lifelong PT and pain meds. She should sue because that's going to be such a massive financial burden. They're not going to say anything because that would absolutely get used against them. And if they compensated her, that would be an admission of guilt. So they're not going to compensate her. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to hope she doesn't sue. Is my guess. That's my guess. This was Lenovo's statement from NBC News. We're aware of the incidents of the TwitchCon visitors who sustained injuries in the Gladiator game saw foam pit at the Lenovo booth. The area has since been closed for any further use while we work with event organizers to look into the incidents. Something that stands out to me is that they're wrong because it wasn't closed after the first injury or even the second injury. And they also do call it a foam pit, which means that now that they've identified it as a foam pit, they needed to play by the standard foam pit like rules. You call it a foam pit, which means you now have to go by exactly how foam pits are maintained, which they didn't. They can't fall back on like some kind of loophole like, we never claimed it was a foam pit or anything. No, again, that's not... I'll say it again. I don't think TwitchCon is liable for their negligence. I'm sure TwitchCon was under the impression they were going to do it properly. Follow the proper protocols for a foam pit. This is a Lenovo Intel situation, so if she's going to sue, I think it has to go to Lenovo Intel instead of going after Twitch. Because it is a Lenovo Intel negligence case. But I guess since they're at TwitchCon, maybe TwitchCon's on the hook as well. I really don't know. I'm not a fucking lawyer. That's just my guess. Because it wasn't their booth. Yeah, people get really mad at the people that were doing the commentary when Adriana broke her back in the pit. I can't even really be mad at them. I think they just had no idea the extent of her injury and were doing everything possible to try and keep things lighthearted and move on. Because they were doing a live broadcast and they were probably panicked. Like, they were just normal people. Those weren't even like normal PR guys or anything. I think they were just like legitimately normal employees of the event. Like, I just don't think they knew. And they just did everything they could to like, you know, hey, it's, you know, let's just move on, you know, this kind of shit. They probably just had no idea.